Admiral Thomas Rivera stood alone on the transport pad, his weathered uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's United Defense Force. A beam of blue light enveloped him, molecules disassembling before reconstructing in the antechamber of the most powerful political entity in known space, the Galactic Council. The massive doors before him towered nearly 30 feet high, carved from some iridescent material that shifted colors like oil on water. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their bodies encased in armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their features remained hidden behind featureless helmets, but Rivera could feel their suspicion radiating toward him. "The council awaits. Human," the guard on the left stated, voice modulated through external speakers. "You will follow protocol. You will speak only when addressed. Deviation will result in immediate removal." Rivera nodded once, keeping his expression neutral. "I understand." The doors parted with a sound like distant thunder, revealing a chamber so vast that its ceiling disappeared into artificial mist high above. Concentric rings of hovering platforms ascended in a spiral formation, each holding representatives from different worlds. Rivera's tactical mind immediately began counting 200 visible delegates, perhaps 1,000 more hidden in the ascending rings. Rivera walked forward, his footsteps echoing against polished stone. The central floor featured an intricate map of the known galaxy, with controlled territories illuminated in pale blue. Earth's solar system was merely a tiny dot at the outer rim, barely visible. "Admiral Thomas Rivera of Earth," announced an unseen voice, the words resonating in multiple harmonics. "You stand before the 112th convocation of the Galactic Council, representing the unregistered territories of Sol System and its unauthorized colonies." A platform descended from the highest tier, bearing 3 figures. The central being, High Counselor Drav, was nearly 12 feet tall with translucent blue-green skin that revealed pulsing organs and fluid-filled chambers beneath. 4 arms emerged from a torso supported by a thick, serpentine lower body. Flanking Drav were 2 other council members, one a crystalline entity that refracted light in dazzling patterns, the other a heavily armored reptilian whose crimson eye gleamed from a face marked by ancient scars. "Humans," boomed Drav, voice carrying perfectly through the chamber's acoustics. "You stand accused of violating Galactic Ordinance 7293, unauthorized expansion into protected sectors." Rivera's back straightened imperceptibly. Behind him, a door opened to admit 5 other humans, scientists, diplomats, and military officers, the complete delegation Earth had been permitted to send. "We expanded into empty systems," Rivera replied, his voice somehow carrying through the vast space. "Systems your charts marked as uninhabited." Murmurs rippled through the assembly like wind through tall grass. The scarred reptilian leaned forward, his platform edging closer to the central floor. "Those sectors were designated as memorial grounds," he rasped, voice like stone grinding against metal, "sacred to the memory of those lost in the Hive Wars." His single eye narrowed. "I am General Vorlox. I fought in those wars for 300 cycles. I watched entire civilizations fall." Rivera met the general's gaze without flinching. "With respect, General, we found no monuments, no markers, nothing to indicate special status." Vorlox slammed a clawed appendage against his platform's railing. "Because the horror that dwelled there left nothing to memorialize. Your ignorance does not excuse trespass." "Perhaps," Rivera said calmly, removing a small device from his pocket. "But there's something else the council should know." Guards immediately materialized around the human delegation, weapons humming with barely contained energy. Rivera smiled thinly. "This isn't a weapon. It's evidence." He placed the device on the floor. A holographic display erupted upward, showing 3-dimensional star charts, highlighted transit routes, and timestamps. "In the past 6 standard years, while accusing us of violating your protected zones, council ships have entered Earth's sovereign territory 17 times. Rivera's voice hardened. "Military vessels." Running dark, the chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates rose from their platforms, voices overlapping in dozens of languages. High Counselor Drav's skin flushed dark purple. "Furthermore," Rivera continued over the din, his voice somehow cutting through, "we've detected anomalous energy signatures consistent with weapons testing in the Proxima system, our system, disguised as scientific expeditions." Drav raised all 4 arms, and silence gradually returned to the chamber. These accusations are documented, Rivera interrupted, a breach of protocol that caused another wave of murmurs. Just as we've documented the surveillance outposts at the edge of our solar system. Outposts bearing council registry codes. The crystalline being to Drav's right rose to its full height, towering over the High Counselor. Its voice resonated like glass chimes. How did you detect shielded vessels? Your technology should not be capable. Rivera's smile never reached his eyes. Perhaps you underestimated us, Ambassador Lith. Humanity has had to evolve quickly since first contact. We're quick studies. General Vorlox leaned forward, his scarred face twisting into what might have been contempt or fear. You fools. You have no idea what you're provoking. I've seen war on a scale you cannot comprehend. His voice dropped. Heed my warning, back down now. Rivera straightened his shoulders. We cannot back down from protecting our sovereignty. If the Council wishes peace, we offer friendship and cooperation. If the Council wishes compliance through intimidation. He paused, looking around the chamber. Then, with great reluctance in defense of Earth and all human colonies, we formally declare a state of war against the Galactic Council until our independence is recognized. Stunned silence fell over the chamber before erupting into pandemonium. Delegates shouted, platforms swayed as their occupants gestured wildly, and guards moved toward the human delegation with weapons raised. High Counselor Drav's voice boomed above the chaos. You would declare war on 2,000 worlds? With what, your handful of primitive vessels? Rivera activated a second device on his wrist. The entire human delegation shimmered and vanished, holograms all along. The real Admiral Rivera, watching the transmission from the bridge of the Earth flagship Indomitable, turned to his officers. And now we find out if our gamble pays off. Transmission terminated from their end, reported Communications Officer Lin. They've realized the deception. As expected, Rivera nodded. Status of the fleet? All 300 ships in position, Admiral, replied Captain Mercer at Tactical. Cloaking systems holding. Council Homeworld remains unaware of our presence. The bridge fell silent as officers exchanged glances. What they had done was unprecedented. Positioning Earth's entire battle fleet around the Council's central world while sending holographic representatives to their meeting. If their plan failed, humanity's first interstellar war would also be its last. Energy spike from the planetary defense grid, Mercer announced tensely. They're scanning for cloaked vessels. Rivera's jaw tightened. Hold position. They're using standard detection protocols. Our shields should... Sir! Lin's voice rose in alarm. Incoming transmission. From General Vorlox. On screen, Rivera ordered. The scarred reptilian's face appeared on the main display. Impressive deception, Admiral. The Council is in disarray. His single eye narrowed. But you've made a grave miscalculation. Have we? Rivera kept his tone neutral. Our fleet surrounds your homeworld. We could strike before your planetary defenses reorient. You could, Vorlox agreed. And perhaps you would inflict significant damage. But there is something you don't understand about those memorial grounds you trespassed into. Something the Council has hidden even from most of its members. Rivera frowned. Explain. Not over an open channel. Vorlox glanced sideways as if checking whether he was observed. Request secure communication human to human. That's not possible, Rivera replied. You're not human. For the first time, the alien general's face showed something like grim amusement. Figure of speech? I mean, direct private communication. Your mind to mine. Captain Mercer stepped closer. Sir, we can't trust... Agreed, General, Rivera interrupted. How do we establish this link? I'm sending coordinates for a neutral meeting point. Vorlox leaned closer to the screen. Come alone, Admiral. What I must tell you concerns not just your war with the Council, but the survival of all sentient life in this galaxy. The screen went dark. Sir? Mercer protested. This is clearly a trap. Rivera stared at the coordinates appearing on his tactical display. Perhaps, but there was something in his eyes. He turned to his officers. Maintain fleet positions. I'm taking a stealth shuttle to these coordinates. Admiral, regulations specifically prohibit... Note your objection in the log, Captain. Rivera cut him off. If I'm not back in 6 hours, you're authorized to withdraw the fleet to Earth space. He moved toward the exit. Sometimes the only way to win a war is to understand why your enemy is fighting it in the first place. Behind him, Earth's first interstellar battle fleet remained in perfect formation. 300 warships surrounding the Council homeworld, invisible but poised to strike, while their commander ventured alone into unknown territory, seeking answers to questions he hadn't thought to ask. General Vorlox limped through the dimly lit corridors of his personal vessel, the pain of ancient wounds flaring with each step. His battle-scarred body bore the marks of 3 centuries of warfare, a missing eye replaced by a glowing red implant, a left arm that ended in a complex mechanical apparatus instead of a natural hand, and the telltale chemical burns that mottled his scaled skin where armor had failed against hive weapons. The ship's interior reflected its owner, functional, unadorned, built for survival rather than comfort. Unlike the ornate council vessels with their soaring architecture and decorative elements, Vorlox's ship was a relic of the Hive Wars, maintained not out of sentiment but necessity. "The humans are making a terrible mistake," Vorlox growled to his aide, Lieutenant Mox, who followed silently behind. The younger reptilian, barely 50 cycles old, had never known the horrors his commander had witnessed. "The Council underestimated them," Mox observed, his voice neutral. "Their technology advancement rate exceeds all projections." "It's not about technology," Vorlox snarled, stopping at a viewport to stare at the distant stars. "It's about will, about horrors that break the mind." His scarred face contorted with the memory of ancient battles. "I need to speak with them directly." "The Council has forbidden all unsanctioned contact with Earth forces," Mox reminded him. High Counselor Drav specifically ordered, "The Council fears what I know." Vorlox's eye flashed crimson in the dim light. "Set course for the rendezvous coordinates. Use my private authentication codes to bypass the security cordons. General, this could be interpreted as treason." "Then let them try me when I return," Vorlox replied, turning away from the viewport. "If anyone returns at all." The human stealth shuttle dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the designated coordinates, a sparse region between star systems, far from established transit lanes. Admiral Rivera sat alone at the controls, scanning for signs of Vorlox's vessel. His tactical display registered a small ship, decloaking less than a kilometer away, an ancient but functional warcraft bearing markings that hadn't been used in Council fleets for centuries. "Human vessel," came Vorlox's voice over the comm system. "Approach and dock." "Standard protocol." Rivera guided his shuttle toward the alien ship, noting with professional interest the numerous weapon emplacements and battle scars visible on its hull. This was no diplomatic vessel. It was a veteran of actual combat. After docking procedures completed, Rivera stepped through the airlock into a Spartanly decorated conference room. The air carried unfamiliar scents, something mineral and sharp like hot metal mixed with unfamiliar spices. General Vorlox stood waiting, his massive frame seeming even larger in the confined space. Up close, Rivera could see that what had appeared to be armor in the Council chamber was actually part of the general's body. Exoskeletal plates grafted directly to flesh, battle technology from another era. "You think you've been clever," Vorlox said without preamble, his single red eye focusing on Rivera with unnerving intensity. "Your holographic deception. Your hidden fleet." Rivera remained expressionless. "We had to demonstrate that intimidation wouldn't work, that humans won't be controlled through fear." "You demonstrated ignorance," Vorlox hissed, moving closer. "I fought the Hive for 3 centuries. Do you know what that means, human? To watch generations of your own kind grow up and die while you continue fighting? To see worlds consumed not by weapons but by something worse?" "We reviewed the historical records available to us," Rivera said carefully. "The Hive Wars ended 400 years ago." "The wars ended." "The Hive didn't." Vorlox moved to a control panel, activating a holographic display that showed star charts similar to those Rivera had presented to the Council, but with vast regions highlighted in pulsing red. "The protected zones you violated? They're not memorials, Admiral. They're quarantine sectors." Rivera's composure faltered momentarily. "Quarantine? The Hive can't be killed, only contained." Vorlox continued, manipulating the display to zoom in on specific systems. "They don't use technology as you understand it. They infest minds. Billions of connected minds forming a singular intelligence. They spread like a plague." Rivera studied the display, his tactical mind quickly grasping the implications. "If that's true, why hide it? Why not warn us when we first made contact?" "Politics!" Vorlox spat the word like a curse. The Council believed knowledge of the hive would cause panic across younger civilizations. Better to keep lesser races away through regulations than risk revealing the truth. "We're not a lesser race," Rivera said, a hint of steel entering his voice. "All races are lesser when facing the hive." Vorlox's voice lowered to almost a whisper. "I've watched them consume entire civilizations from within. They enter through dreams, through thoughts. They take control subtly until one day, you realize your neighbor, your child, your leader is no longer themselves." The door slid open, and Lieutenant Commander Ilara Wright entered, her face grim. She had been waiting aboard the human shuttle. "Monitoring communications with the fleet, sir. We've lost contact with Outpost Epsilon," she reported, her professional demeanor barely containing her concern. "All 40,000 colonists. No distress signal, no warning. Complete communications blackout." Rivera's eyes widened. "That's inside our territory, far from any protected zone." "It's beginning," Vorlox whispered, his reptilian features freezing in what Rivera now recognized as fear. "Your war with the Council will have to wait, Admiral. Something far worse has awakened." As if on cue, the ship's alarms blared. The communications officer's voice came through the overhead speakers. "General, we're detecting thousands of distress calls from both human colonies and Council worlds." Rivera turned to Vorlox, his face pale. "What have we done?" "You didn't do this," Vorlox replied grimly. "But your movement into the quarantine zones may have triggered something dormant. Now we all face extinction." The old general straightened, his warrior spirit visibly rekindling. "The question is, will humanity fight alongside the Council against the true enemy, or will you persist in your declaration of war and doom us all?" Without hesitation, Rivera extended his hand in the human gesture of alliance. "If what you're saying is true, then the Council and Earth face a common threat. I propose an immediate ceasefire and joint response." Vorlox stared at the outstretched hand before grasping it with his mechanical appendage. "A wise decision. But we must act quickly. The hive spreads exponentially once awakened." "I need to contact my fleet," Rivera said, moving toward the communications console. "First, there's something you must understand about the nature of the enemy," Vorlox cautioned. "The hive doesn't fight with ships or weapons, at least not primarily. Its first vector of attack is through the mind." Rivera frowned. "Psychological warfare?" "Beyond that," Vorlox explained, activating another display that showed neural patterns. "The hive operates on a quantum level, creating entanglement between infected minds. Once a critical mass is achieved in any population center, the spread becomes nearly impossible to contain." Lieutenant Commander Wright stepped forward. "How do we fight something that attacks the mind itself?" "In the old wars, we used neural blockers," Vorlox replied. "Devices that disrupted the quantum frequencies the hive uses to connect minds. But they were crude, painful. Many preferred death to wearing them. Our technology has advanced considerably since then," Rivera noted. "If we could adapt these blockers using modern quantum field theory, possibly," Vorlox acknowledged. "But first, we need to establish the extent of the current outbreak. And warn both your people and mine." Rivera nodded decisively. "Commander Wright, return to the fleet immediately. Inform Captain Mercer of our alliance with General Vorlox and order all ships to maintain defensive positions, but stand down from offensive posture." "Yes, Admiral." Wright saluted and turned to leave. "One more thing," Rivera called after her. "Tell Dr. Volkov to begin work on neural protection immediately. Priority Alpha." As Wright departed, the ship's communications officer appeared in the doorway. "General, Council security is demanding your surrender. They're calling you a traitor." Vorlox's eye narrowed. Expected. The High Council doesn't want the truth known. It would expose centuries of deception. Rivera's tactical mind worked quickly. "My fleet still surrounds the Council homeworld. That gives us leverage." "You would still threaten the Council?" Vorlox asked, surprised. "Not threaten," Rivera corrected. "Protect. If the hive is targeting population centers, the Council homeworld with its 15 billion inhabitants is the prime target. My fleet can form a defensive perimeter while we attempt to negotiate with Councillor Drav." For the first time, something like respect showed in Vorlox's expression. "You adapt quickly, Admiral. Perhaps humanity brings more to this fight than I anticipated." "We've spent our history fighting ourselves," Rivera said grimly. "It's given us certain perspectives on warfare." Their planning was interrupted as the ship shuddered violently. "We're under attack," shouted the communications officer. Vorlox moved quickly to the bridge, Rivera following close behind. The tactical display showed 5 Council security vessels surrounding them. Weapons charged, General Vorlox, came a cold voice over the communication system. By order of High Counselor Drav, you are hereby charged with treason and unauthorized contact with enemy forces. Surrender immediate. Dr. Nadia Volkov peered through the observation glass at the colonist strapped to the medical bed. The man, once a mining engineer named Marcus Teller, stared at the ceiling with unblinking eyes. His expression remained blank, devoid of the fear or panic one would expect from someone restrained in a medical facility. Occasionally, his fingers would twitch in patterns that Nadia had begun to recognize as repeated sequences, not random movements. The isolation chamber was one of 37 aboard the medical frigate Hippocrates, each containing a colonist evacuated from Outpost Epsilon before communications went dark. Their vital signs were stable, but brain activity showed bizarre patterns Nadia had never encountered in 15 years of neurological research. No physiological changes, she noted into her recorder, watching as the monitoring equipment tracked Marcus's neural activity. Brain scans show unusual synchronization patterns across traditionally independent brain regions, but nothing to explain the behavioral changes. Fleet Commander Liam Porter frowned beside her, his military bearing at odds with the sterile medical environment. He was normal yesterday? According to his crew, he went to sleep normal and woke up like this. Nadia gestured to the other isolation chambers visible through a large window. Same with all 37 affected colonists we evacuated from Epsilon. And the others? Porter's voice was tight with concern. Nadia's expression darkened. The remaining colonists refused evacuation. When our security teams attempted to approach, they formed a perimeter around the main complex. They just linked arms and began walking toward our personnel, completely silent. No demands, no communication. Hostile? Not exactly. They didn't attack, but they wouldn't stop advancing. The security team had to retreat to avoid using force against civilians. Nadia rubbed her temples. We had to leave nearly 4,000 people behind. Porter studied the patient through the glass. General Vorlox claims this is the hive. Mind infestation. It fits the historical accounts he provided, Nadia agreed, pulling up comparative data on her tablet. But there's something else. She handed Porter the device. We're detecting quantum entanglement between the affected individuals. Their brains are literally linked at the subatomic level. Porter's eyes widened as he studied the data. Is it contagious? Can it spread to the medical staff? Unknown. We've implemented full isolation protocols. All interaction is through remote systems only. The patient suddenly spoke, his voice eerily calm and devoid of its natural accent. You cannot isolate us. You cannot contain us. We are already everywhere. Porter stiffened. Can he hear us through the glass? Impossible, Nadia whispered. The chambers are completely soundproof and we're not using any communication systems. The patient turned his head, eyes focusing directly on Porter. We know your thoughts, Commander. We know your fear. It gives us form. Identical voices echoed from all isolation chambers simultaneously. We are awakening across your stars. We are the dream at the edge of your minds. Porter's communicator buzzed. Sir, came an urgent voice. Reports coming in from 7 more colonies. Same symptoms, and 3 council worlds are going dark. It's spreading too fast, Nadia said, horrified. This can't be conventional contagion. Even airborne pathogens would take weeks to spread between star systems. Porter's face hardened. Quarantine isn't working. He pressed his communicator. Bridge, get me Admiral Rivera and General Vorlox now. Hours later, in the war room of the Earth flagship Indomitable, Admiral Rivera stood before a holographic display showing spreading red zones across both human and council space. The patterns formed no logical progression, outbreaks appearing simultaneously in systems separated by thousands of light years. Beside him, the towering form of General Vorlox hunched over the strategic table, his mechanical hand manipulating the display to highlight specific systems. The hive spreads through dreams, Vorlox explained to the assembled human and council officers. During sleep cycles, minds become vulnerable to infiltration. The first infected become beacons, reaching out to nearby sleepers. Once a critical mass is achieved, they can project across vast distances. Then we tell people not to sleep, suggested Commander Porter. For how long? Dr. Volkov countered. Sleep deprivation will kill them within days. We deployed the neural blockers from the old wars, Vorlox continued. But they're proving less effective than before. The hive has evolved. Rivera studied the infection map. We need to understand what they want. Every sentient species has motivation, goals. They want unity, Vorlox said grimly. Total unity of all conscious minds into their collective. They don't conquer, they incorporate. A science officer approached with new data. Sir, we've analyzed the quantum signatures from the infected. There's a pattern, a central point from which the entanglement originates. The display shifted, triangulating to a location deep in council space, nearly 40 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. The Nexus, Vorlox breathed, his single eye widening. The Hive Queen. You knew about this? Rivera demanded, turning to face the general. Suspected. Never confirmed. Vorlox's scaled face tightened. In the final days of the Hive War, we believed we'd destroyed their central consciousness. The remnants seemed dormant, contained in the quarantine zones. Yet you never verified the Queen's destruction? Commander Porter asked incredulously. The casualties were too high, Vorlox replied, a haunted look crossing his features. We lost 60% of our forces in the final assault. The Council deemed further engagement too costly. Rivera studied the coordinates. If we strike at this nexus, could we end the infection? A direct assault failed before, Vorlox warned. The Queen doesn't fight conventionally, she converts. Entire fleets turned against us mid-battle, crews suddenly infected and fighting for the enemy. Dr. Volkov, who had been quietly analyzing data, suddenly looked up. What if we don't fight the infection? What if we use it? All eyes turned to her. The quantum entanglement works both ways, she explained, moving to the display and highlighting the neural patterns. If we could capture that signal, reverse engineer it, you're suggesting we create our own hive mind? Porter asked incredulously. No. Nadia's eyes glinted with scientific determination. I'm suggesting we use humanity's greatest strength, our individuality within unity. A controlled network, not to control minds, but to shield them. She pulled up the data from the infected colonists. The hive creates perfect synchronization, eliminating individual thought. But what if we created imperfect synchronization, enough to connect but not control? Rivera and Vorlox exchanged looks. It could work, the Admiral said slowly, and it would require both human innovation and council resources. Your quantum physicists, Vorlox acknowledged, and our manufacturing capabilities. Then our war is postponed? Rivera asked. No, Vorlox replied, extending his natural hand. Our war is over. We have a new enemy now. As they shook hands, alarms blared throughout the ship. The bridge officer's voice came through with undisguised panic. Admiral! We're receiving reports from the Sol system. Earth just went dark. All communications ceased. Our last transmission shows masses of people walking into the streets, all moving in perfect synchronization. The war room fell silent. How? Rivera whispered, his composure finally cracking. Earth is protected by our most advanced defense systems. How could they penetrate so quickly? The same way they're spreading everywhere, Vorlox replied grimly. Through dreams. Through thoughts. He turned to Dr. Volkov. How quickly can you develop this shield technology? With unlimited resources? She calculated rapidly. 3 days for a prototype, perhaps 2 weeks for mass production. Earth doesn't have 2 weeks, Rivera said, his voice hollow. Then we prioritize, Vorlox decided. Protect key personnel first. Scientists, military leaders, those essential to fighting the hive. Then expand outward. Rivera's hands clenched into fists. We need to send reconnaissance to Earth, confirm the situation. I'll go, Porter volunteered immediately. Too risky, Vorlox countered. If you're infected, we lose a key commander. I designed a preliminary neural blocker based on your specifications, Dr. Volkov interjected. It's crude, but it might provide short-term protection. Enough for a quick reconnaissance mission, Rivera nodded. Approved. Commander Porter, take a stealth craft. Observe only. No direct contact with the infected. As Porter left to prepare, Vorlox moved closer to Rivera. I've seen many leaders face the loss of their homeworlds, Admiral. Few maintain their focus afterward. Earth isn't lost, Rivera replied, steel returning to his voice. It's occupied. There's a difference. A distinction that will matter only if we win, Vorlox observed. Then we better win. Rivera turned to address the remaining officers. I want 3 task forces assembled. First, scientific, led by Dr. Volkov, focused on developing the neural shield technology. Second, intelligence, gathering all data on the Nexus location and hive movements. Third, military, preparing for a direct assault on the Nexus. Direct assault? Vorlox questioned. I told you what happened before. Yes, but this time we'll have your experience and our innovation. Rivera's eyes hardened. And something else you didn't have then. What? Nothing left to lose. 12 hours later, Commander Porter's stealth craft approached Earth's orbit. The planet below appeared deceptively normal. Blue oceans. Professor Takumi Ishida hadn't slept in 72 hours. His eyes were rimmed red as he stared at the simulation results on his lab screen, the numbers blurring occasionally as his exhaustion fought against the stimulants in his system. Around him, a joint team of human and council scientists worked frantically, their differences set aside in the face of extinction. The laboratory aboard the anti-science vessel Prometheus had been hastily converted from a general research facility to a specialized quantum mechanics workstation. Equipment from both human and council ships had been cobbled together, creating a hybrid technology platform that neither civilization could have built alone. The quantum shield is holding in the simulations, he reported to the holographic projections of Admiral Rivera and General Vorlox that hovered above the central conference table. But I can't guarantee it will work on biological brains. The quantum fluctuations are unpredictable. We don't have time for guarantees, Rivera replied. The Admiral looked haggard, the weight of Earth's fall heavy on his shoulders. The hive has taken 8 more colonies since yesterday. 3 more council worlds have gone dark. What about test subjects? Vorlox asked, his reptilian features showing the council equivalent of concern. Simulations can only tell us so much. Takumi hesitated, exchanging glances with his colleagues. I've tested it on myself. Silence fell over the communication. Explain, Vorlox demanded. I modified a standard neural interface to generate the counter frequency. Takumi tapped the small device attached to his temple, a circular metallic disc with tiny lights pulsing around its perimeter. It creates a kind of static in the quantum field the hive uses to connect minds. He looked up at the holographic figures. I've been wearing it through 3 sleep cycles. No infection and side effects? Rivera asked, leaning forward. Vivid dreams. I can sense the hive pressing against the barrier. Takumi suppressed a shudder. They know I'm resisting. They keep trying different approaches. A council scientist, a floating octopoid named Dr. Zalani, inserted herself into the conversation. Her translucent body pulsed with biochemical lights as she spoke, a visual component of her species' language. The neural interface can be mass-produced using council fabrication systems. We estimate capacity at 1 million units per day. We could equip billions within weeks, but will it free those already infected? Rivera pressed the question everyone wanted answered. Takumi shook his head. Unknown. Their neural pathways have been rewired. Breaking the connection might cause permanent damage or... He didn't finish the sentence. Or death, Rivera supplied grimly. We need a better solution. One that saves everyone. General Vorlox leaned forward, his single eye gleaming. You still think like humans, trying to save everyone. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice, not this time, Rivera insisted. There's something about humans the hive finds particularly attractive. They went after Earth specifically despite the distance. Why? Takumi exchanged glances with Dr. Zalani. We have a theory. Human brains possess unusually high neuroplasticity compared to most council species. Meaning? Vorlox prompted. Our brains adapt and change more readily, Takumi explained. Most council species have more specialized neural structures, efficient but relatively fixed. Human brains remain malleable throughout our lives. He pulled up comparative brain scans on a side display. It makes us easier to infect, but it might also be our salvation. Explain, Rivera demanded. Council species have more specialized neural structures. Once the hive rewires them, the damage is likely permanent. Takumi highlighted specific regions in the comparative scans. But humans can potentially revert, Rivera finished, understanding dawning. If we break the connection. Theoretically, Takumi cautioned. But we'd need to reach the Nexus directly. Disrupt the Queen's signal at its source. Vorlox snorted, a sound like stones grinding together. Impossible. The Nexus is surrounded by millions of hive-controlled beings and vessels. Any approach would be detected and immediately overwhelmed. A new voice joined the conversation. Not if they can't see us coming. All eyes turned to the doorway where Lieutenant Commander Diana Reeves stood, her uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's Special Operations Division. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and a fresh scar ran across her right cheekbone, evidence of a recent evacuation operation gone wrong. The Indomitable's not the only ship with cloaking technology, she continued, entering the lab with the confident stride of someone accustomed to dangerous missions. I command a stealth vessel designed for deep infiltration. Quantum dampeners, minimal crew signature, we could approach undetected. One ship couldn't carry enough firepower to damage the Nexus, Vorlox objected, his tactical mind immediately calculating combat effectiveness. Diana smiled thinly. We don't need firepower. We need delivery. She looked at Takumi. Your counter-frequency device, can it be modified to broadcast rather than shield? Takumi's eyes widened as he followed her reasoning. You're suggesting a quantum pulse bomb, she confirmed, delivered to the heart of the Nexus. One massive burst that disrupts the entire network simultaneously. The calculations would be immensely complex, Dr. Zelani cautioned, her tentacles weaving patterns of concern. Too strong and you could cause neural damage to everyone connected. Too weak, and the hive simply reestablishes control. Then we'll get it exactly right, Takumi said, determination replacing exhaustion in his voice. Rivera studied Diana. This is a suicide mission. Even with stealth technology, extracting after detonation would be nearly impossible. Probably, she acknowledged without emotion, but Earth is lost either way if we do nothing. Vorlox's reptilian features shifted into what might have been respect. I misjudged humanity's resolve. I will provide all available intelligence on the Nexus from the previous war. As the plans took shape, a junior scientist burst into the lab. Professor, we're detecting anomalies in the hive's quantum field. It's evolving. On the main display, the infection pattern changed, spreading faster, more efficiently. They're adapting to our counter-frequency, Takumi realized with horror. They know what we're planning. Then we move now, Diana stated firmly. Before they can fully adapt, Rivera nodded grimly. Launch within 6 hours. We'll create a diversion to draw attention from your approach. As the room erupted into frantic preparation, Dr. Zelani drifted closer to Takumi. There's something you're not telling them, the octopoid observed quietly. Takumi's hand unconsciously touched the neural interface at his temple. The dreams aren't just dreams, he whispered. I can hear the Queen, she's afraid of us, of humans specifically. Why would an entity that powerful fear humans? Because, Takumi replied, his voice barely audible. We're the first species she's encountered that dreams as intensely as she does. 5 hours later, Takumi stood in the launch bay of the Prometheus, watching as technicians loaded the modified quantum pulse device, now called the Dreamcaster, onto Diana's stealth vessel. The black ship resembled a predatory bird with its swept-back wings and narrow profile, designed to absorb rather than reflect both light and scanning signals. Admiral Rivera approached, now in person rather than hologram. The commander had aged years and days, but his resolve remained unbroken. Is it ready? He asked without preamble. As ready as it can be, Takumi confirmed. The broadcast frequency will disrupt the hive's neural network at its source. If Diana can place it within 1 kilometer of the Nexus core, it should affect the entire network. And the infected? Earth? Takumi hesitated. Best case scenario, they all wake up confused but themselves again. Worst case, he didn't need to finish. Rivera nodded once, understanding the stakes. Commander Reeves has assembled a volunteer crew. 12 personnel, 6 humans, 6 council species, all wearing your protective interfaces. It won't be enough if they're captured, Takumi warned. The interfaces only work temporarily. Extended exposure to the Queen's direct signal would overwhelm them. They understand the risks. Rivera's eyes tracked Diana as she performed final checks on her vessel. She requested you join the mission. Takumi blinked in surprise. Me? I'm not combat trained. No, but you understand the Dreamcaster better than anyone. And you've experienced the Queen's attempts to breach your mind. Rivera fixed him with an evaluating stare. She believes you might be able to sense the Queen's presence. Guide them to the central chamber. Takumi felt a chill run through him. The thought of moving closer to the presence that had been battering at his mental defenses was terrifying. Yet he found himself nodding. "I'll go." "The diversion fleet will create a corridor," Rivera explained, pulling up a tactical display on his portable unit. "Combined forces, human and council, will draw as much attention as possible while you slip through here." He indicated a narrow approach vector. "Admiral," Takumi said hesitantly, "there's something I haven't shared with the full team, something I've experienced through the interface, so I go on. The Queen, she's not what we think." "Not entirely." Takumi struggled to find words for impressions that weren't quite thoughts. "There's a complexity to her consciousness. The hive isn't just consuming minds, it's connecting them, preserving them in a way." Rivera's expression hardened. "Tell that to Earth's population walking around like empty shells." "The joining is imperfect," Takumi idiom. The stealth vessel Phantom slipped through the darkness of space, its hull absorbing rather than reflecting light, its energy signature dampened to near undetectable levels. After 14 hours of tense travel, they approached the outer defensive perimeter of the Nexus, a region where no Council ship had ventured in 4 centuries. Inside the cramped command center, Lieutenant Commander Diana Reeves checked the final approach vectors. Her face was illuminated by the soft blue glow of tactical displays showing the positions of hive-controlled vessels, hundreds of them, surrounding a massive crystalline structure floating in space. Beside her, Professor Takumi Ishida made last-minute adjustments to the Dreamcaster, the quantum pulse device designed to disrupt the hive mind. His hands moved with precision despite his exhaustion, calibrating frequencies with micrometer accuracy. "Nexus perimeter in 20 minutes, Diana announced to her small crew of 12 volunteers, 6 humans and 6 Council species, all wearing Takumi's neural interfaces. "Final equipment check. Weapons cold, passive sensors only. Diversion fleet is in position," reported Ensign Jackson at Communications. "Admiral Rivera says they're ready on your mark." Diana nodded. "The moment we drop out of stealth for the Dreamcaster deployment, they'll detect us. We'll have minutes, maybe seconds, to reach the central chamber." Takumi looked up from his work, dark circles under his eyes. "There's something else you should know." He hesitated, aware of how his next words would sound. "I've been in contact with the Queen." Stunned silence fell over the bridge. "Explain," Diana demanded, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm, through the neural interface. "It doesn't just block the hive, it creates a kind of dialogue channel." Takumi's eyes were feverish with lack of sleep and strange knowledge. "She's ancient, older than the Council. She remembers the beginning of sentient thought in this galaxy. And she wants to absorb all of it," Diana said sharply. "Billions enslaved." "No," Takumi shook his head. "That's what I thought too. But it's not enslavement she seeks. It's communion," Ensign Jackson scoffed. "Tell that to Earth's population, walking around like zombies." "The joining is imperfect," Takumi admitted. "Different species respond differently. Council races resist integration, fighting until their minds break. But human—" he looked around at his colleagues. "We adapt, we dream, we imagine." Diana studied him carefully. "What are you suggesting?" "The Dreamcaster doesn't have to destroy the network. It could reshape it." Takumi leaned forward, struggling to articulate concepts at the edge of understanding. "The Queen connects minds, but what if we could maintain individuality within connection? A democratic hive mind?" Diana sounded incredulous. "Exactly." Takumi's eyes lit up. "Shared consciousness without loss of self. Vorlocks thought this was a war, but it's a first contact gone wrong, spanning centuries." Before Diana could respond, alarms blared. "We've been detected," cried the navigation officer, a Fraxian whose crystalline appendages flickered with stress. "Multiple vessels changing course to intercept." "Too early," Diana growled. "Launch the signal for the diversion fleet." On the view screen, hundreds of combined human and Council warships appeared at the edge of the system, weapons firing to draw attention from the Phantom's approach. The hive defenders immediately split their forces, the majority moving to engage this more obvious threat. "It's working," Ensign Jackson reported. 80% of defensive vessels are breaking off to engage the fleet. "Taking evasive action," the pilot announced, hands flying over controls as the Phantom dove toward the crystalline structure. The ship shuddered as enemy fire grazed their shields. Diana turned to Takumi. Whatever you're planning, be ready. We're going in hot. The Phantom weaved through diminishing defensive fire, its stealth systems compromised but its speed and maneuverability keeping it just ahead of pursuit. The massive crystalline structure grew larger on the view screen, a geometric impossibility of angles and facets that seemed to fold into dimensions beyond normal space. Impact in 30 seconds, called the pilot. Brace for controlled crash. The Phantom shuddered violently as it smashed through the outer crystal layer of the Nexus, artificial gravity fluctuating wildly before emergency systems compensated. Warning lights flashed across every console as the ship skidded to a halt inside a vast chamber. Structural integrity at 60%, reported the engineer. Life support stable. Diana was already moving. Deployment team with me. Security established perimeter. Emergency systems deployed. The airlock blew open and the team rushed out. Weapons ready. The Dreamcaster secured in a portable containment unit carried by Takumi and a Fraxian engineer, but no resistance met them. The chamber stood empty, except for a pulsing crystalline formation at its center, a structure resembling a massive, faceted brain. Glowing with inner light, streams of energy flowed through transparent conduits, connecting the central mass to the larger Nexus structure. The Queen, Takumi whispered, approaching slowly. Diana readied the Dreamcaster. Set it for destruction mode. Takumi placed his hand on the device. There's another way. Before Diana could stop him, he interfaced directly with the Queen, connecting his neural device to the crystal surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Takumi's body arched backward, his eyes rolling white as information flooded his mind. Diana rushed forward but stopped as Takumi's voice emerged, changed, harmonizing with something else. We see now, they said. The error of connection, the pain of forced unity. Diana kept her weapon trained on the crystal. What are you doing to him? Learning, replied the voice. Through him we understand what we could not before. Individuality within unity, dreams within structure. Takumi's body relaxed slightly, his eyes focusing again though a strange light pulsed behind them. She's listening, Diana. For the first time in millennia, the Hive is adapting to us instead of forcing us to adapt to it. We cannot undo what has been done, continued the harmonized voice. But we can transform the connection. Diana hesitated. The infected on Earth, on all worlds, they will return to themselves but carry the memory of unity. A bridge between worlds. Takumi turned to the Dreamcaster, making rapid adjustments. Not destruction, transformation. We reshape the quantum field to preserve individual consciousness within the network. The crystal pulsed brighter. Your Admiral Rivera approaches the Nexus perimeter. Many ships lost. Much death. Diana activated her communicator. Admiral, hold your position. We're attempting negotiation. Negotiation? Rivera's incredulous voice crackled through. With the Hive? Trust me, sir. Professor Ishida has made contact. After a tense pause, Rivera replied, You have 1 hour before we resume the assault. Takumi worked feverishly, altering the Dreamcaster's parameters while maintaining his connection to the Queen. The rest of the team watched in tense silence. Weapons still ready, uncertain whether to trust this unexpected development. It's ready, he finally announced. A reconfiguration pulse. It will transform the network, not destroy it. And if it fails? Diana asked, her duty to the mission warring with hope. Then use this. He handed her a small device. Emergency destruct sequence. Complete severance of the network. Diana nodded grimly. Proceed. Takumi activated the Dreamcaster. A wave of energy pulsed outward from the crystal, rippling through the structure and beyond into space itself. The chamber filled with light so intense that the team shielded their eyes, the quantum resonance vibrating through their bodies at a cellular level. For one terrible moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then communications exploded with activity. Admiral Rivera to Phantom. Something's happening fleet-wide. The enemy vessels are standing down. Reports flooded in from across human and council space. The infected were awakening, confused but themselves again. On Earth, billions of people stopped their synchronized movements, blinking in bewilderment as individual consciousness returned. In the crystal chamber, Takumi stood before the now dimmer Queen. It worked. Connection with consent. Unity with individuality. Diana approached cautiously. What happens now? The harmonized voice responded, Now we learn from each other. The hive dreams with humanity. Humanity thinks with the council. The council builds with the hive. Takumi smiled tiredly. A new kind of galactic community. Not one of conquest or subjugation, but of shared consciousness and preserved identity. The veteran warned the galaxy. Diana mused, and humanity declared war anyway. But what we found wasn't the enemy we expected. It rarely is, Takumi replied, disconnecting from the crystal. The greatest wars are often the result of miscommunication. Across species, across time, across understanding. 3 days later, Admiral Rivera stood again before the Galactic Council, but this time with General Vorlox at his side rather than opposing him. The chamber hummed with a new energy. Representatives from formerly hive-controlled worlds now taking their places among the council species. We stand at an unprecedented moment in galactic history. Rivera addressed the assembly. The hive war that began centuries ago ends not with destruction but with transformation. Vorlox stepped forward, his battle-scarred body standing straight with new purpose. As one who fought against the hive for longer than most species have known the stars, I never imagined peace would come through understanding rather than victory. High Counselor Drav, now joined by a crystalline Ava,